Welcome back to another episode of FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. I'm Craig Haley, FCS Senior Editor for Stats Perform and TheAnalyst.com, along with Gary Reasons. Gary, two-time Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants, also a College Football Hall of Famer, three-time All-American at Northwestern State University. Gary, how you doing today?
It's a fantastic week, Craig. We had a great weekend of FCS football. We're going to go through all of it, and we had a little Halloween treat yesterday, which was fun. So it's always good to follow up a little holiday.
Well, Gary, our FCS Delivered is produced by Seth Biley and Graham Bell. You can find all our coverage on TheAnalyst.com, and of course, our FCS Delivered podcast. You can find it on all the platforms. Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeart Radio, and even more. And of course, you can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just search for FCS Delivered. And that's a great place to find all our content as far as Gary's FCS National Awards on campus visits, where he visits a campus every week. See the videos, see the interviews. It's just great stuff on our YouTube channel. Now, in today's episode, Gary, we will review Week 9, great action all around the FCS. We'll find out what on-campus visit you had this week in segment 2. And of course, we're going to set up a big Week 10 as we move into November. 3 weeks left of the regular season for most conferences. So it's just a lot to talk about. We're looking forward to it, Gary.
It is. It's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. It is. It's conference action for sure, Craig, and that's what you're talking about here. When you get into the November schedule here in on all levels of college football, this is where you're going to start winning conference championships, and at the FCS level, you're going to have an entry into the FCS playoffs. Whichever team, that's their goal they set out at the top of the season.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Florida A&M actually clinched a spot in the SWAC championship game this past week by beating Prairie View. A&M, Florida A&M is the winner of the East Division and will play in the December 2nd championship game. Probably will wind up hosting it. Great to see, all these bids starting to happen. Now, they got over the Jackson State hump this year by beating Florida A&M beat Jackson State to open their conference season. So that is the difference here as opposed to recent weeks. But Jackson State has gone on to have a big season. And I do want to point out what happened this past week in Week 9, Gary. Leilani Armenta became the first female player to score points in an FCS HBCU game. She kicked 3 extra points in a win over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Leilani was originally intending to play soccer at Jackson State. She's a freshman, but here she is making history for the Jackson State Tigers.
Congratulations, Leilani. Put some points on the board. Jackson State loved liking that. Hey, Coach Prime did some unique things there, and Leilani's doing some unique things. So good job there at Jackson State.
Congrats to Leilani. Now, our FedEx Ground game of the week for, this past week was number 1 versus number 4, and it turned into a mismatch. I mean, South Dakota State, obviously the top-ranked team in all of FCS, they kind of rolled 37-3 win at number 4 South Dakota. The Jackrabbits trailed 3-0, Gary, after the first quarter and just took over and really cemented first place in the Missouri Valley Football Conference.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on that one, Craig, and it just did not go to the way of South Dakota. So South Dakota State they just kind of took off after the first part of the first quarter, and they just rolled, as you said, onto a victory there. So congratulations to the Jackrabbits. They continue to be unblemished and kind of got on top once again of their in-state rival.
Yeah, I tell you what, fourth quarter, I actually turned it off. And at that point, Amar Johnson scored his second 20-yard touchdown run. The defense just dominated the Coyotes, only allowed under 200 yards. So, our picks for FCS Game of the Week have been terrific all year, but the Jackrabbits really just made it a little different this past week. Now, number 1 rolled, Gary, but number 2 got upset. Idaho won at home 24-21 inside the Kibbe Dome, beat Montana State. It was a late touchdown in the final 3 minutes. Giovanni McCoy threw a touchdown pass to Hayden Hatton. They go back and forth in the Big Sky, Gary, and Idaho had this one.
Yeah, Idaho's done a pretty nice job there. They kind of rebounded. Jason X got that team rolling. And, the combination you talked about, Craig, Giovanni McCoy, and Hayden Hatton, that is one that is just a consistency for that football team that every team that they play has to contend with, because that's a very powerful duo there. And they've made that connection over again throughout the last couple of seasons. And I think it's still it's going to keep them, in the mix here, because that's a passing game and an offense with Idaho that can really just kind of get it lit up pretty well. And Idaho's playing pretty well.
Yeah, everybody's gunning for those top two spots with the playoff committee, because then you're guaranteed a home playoff game all the way through the semifinals leading into Frisco. So that is a big deal. Obviously, the selection committee includes the Stats Perform FCS Top 25 poll as a tool. Right now, Idaho moved up to number 3 after this big win. We have a new number 2 after Montana State's loss. Furman is the Paladins are now number 2. It's their highest ranking in 18 years. This week they have a big game. They are at number 14 Chattanooga, and the winner not only clinches at least a share of the Southern Conference title, but actually earns that first automatic bid to the FCS playoffs. Obviously, we're going to fill out a 2014 field this month. But yes, the SoCon game this week will determine the first playoff spot, Gary. Furman or Chattanooga.
Yeah, and I had the chance to go see the Mocs at Chattanooga, and really took my takeaway from them was that they really are a very structured program, and I think they've got things going their way. Furman has really come on here, and they have cemented themselves as a real leader in that conference, and also in the country now, ascending to number 2 in our poll, which is pretty impressive. So this is a contest here, Craig, that is just, you've got a lot of different little nuances that can go either way, but I think it's a great matchup.
Yeah, Paladins, you mentioned, I think it's 12 straight Southern Conference wins going back to early last year. They're on a roll. I mean, it's a tough game, though, going to Chattanooga, and it's a fun scenario, kind of like win and you must pretty much claim everything in the Southern Conference. But now, with that in mind, knowing that the Southern Conference race is really going to be determined this week, let's take a look at some of the other conference races that sort of stand out, going into this make or break month of November. There's plenty of good ones to pick from, but what stands out to you conference-wise, Gary?
Well, you got to look to the Big Sky. That really is one of the conferences where you have a lot of action going on there. Montana, you talk about those guys, Idaho, Montana State, all of those are top 6 in our poll, each of them at 4-1 in conference. So that's something that you have to look at, is the Big Sky. How are they going to unfold here first in their conference, and then how does it affect the polls? And we're going to see this over the next several weeks, especially in the Big Sky and Missouri Valley Conference. Those two conferences, Craig, are really going to be vying for a lot, I believe, of the playoff bids here for the FCS championship.
Hey, you mentioned the 3 front runners in the Big Sky: Montana State, Idaho. But it's like a logjam, because you got Sacramento State, and with those other 3, they're all in the top 7 of our top 25 poll. Idaho State, Portland State, Northern Arizona, they're all one game behind at 3-2 in the race. It's fun to see this going into the final month where there's so many scenarios. But, we did talk earlier this year about Montana's non-conference schedule not being the strongest. They really finish up strong in conference. Do you think they can get it done, the Grizz?
Yeah, they've got to win out pretty much for the most part. Sac State, Portland State, Montana State. So yeah, they're going to have a chance, the opportunity to do that in that conference. And I think the Montana it sets up in a very good way for them.
Yeah, and they've lost 3 in a row to Sacramento State, who they host this week. They've lost 5 out of 6 of the last meetings of the Brawl of the Wild against Montana State, their arch rival. So they really have to get it done in this month, last month, but they've really come on strong, Gary, the Montana Grizzlies. Some of the other conferences, I do like the Big South, Ohio Valley, OVC Football Association. Obviously, the Big South and the OVC emerged this year. Now, last year, the OVC was criticized a little bit because all their tiebreakers led to a coin flip to determine their automatic bid. Southeast Missouri won the flip over UT Martin. UT Martin did not wind up getting an at-large bid, so it was a wild scenario. Right now, Southeast Missouri's 3-0 in conference. UT Martin's 3-1, and then you have the teams that are 2-1. Gardner Webb, which beat UT Martin. Bryant, Tennessee State. The big game is probably SEMO at UT Martin coming up in another week, November 11th. But do you like this mix of teams when you have two conferences joined together into one league?
Yeah, and what they've done, Craig, is they've brought together, smaller conferences to get a larger playing pool here to spread out the schedule just a little bit. And I like what that does for these two conferences. So it gives them a little bit more notoriety, I think, across the country and really amongst themselves, kind of changing things up a little bit. So I do like the Big South WC matchups.
Yeah, and we talk about the great matchups and great conference races. The CAA football, the Football Athletic Association, had 15 members for football, largest conference in FCS history. Of course, that's going to create a log jam. I mean, Delaware's 5-0, leading the way, bunch of teams behind them. But Delaware, sort of like Montana, they finished strong. I mean, they're hosting Elon, they're at Campbell, they're hosting rival Villanova. Whew, I'm just amazed by how many good teams are in the CAA, Gary.
Yeah, there really are. And you got three teams, Craig, UAlbany, Elon, and Villanova. They're all at 4-1. So, this race is not yet over. So there's something that is definitely going to occur here over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I see all these teams just vying for an opportunity to get on top in that conference. But it is, as you said, a large conference, and really we've talked about this before, but they're almost somewhat unbalanced because they all don't play each other because the conference is so big, but they do have as many conference games on the schedule, so that's what they go with. And it's just maybe the luck of the draw of whether your team has all the goods to get you to the end and possibly be on top of that conference.
Yeah, there's probably no way of avoiding that, Gary, the unbalanced schedule. It's a great point. Is there any way of fixing that?
Not really. You just have to find, a schedule, that you agree with. I think that they probably have some discussions amongst the athletic directors as well as the head coaches as far as how the scheduling is done. And once you have that agreed to and set upon, which they have, and they've got this all in place, that's how they build out these conference schedules year after year after year after year. And so you're probably not going to have a whole lot of repeat teams that you're playing. Now, there may be some matchups that these conferences put in place that they may do have annual meetings because they had a previous conference or historical relationship of a competitor that you want to play on an annual basis. And so some of those are in play when you get these large conferences that you'll be playing a certain opponent every year because it's one of those that you've set out. But that's all in kind of, I'll call it the bylaws of what the conference scheduling. Start talking about those things when you go to your conference meetings. And but that's what college football is. It's not a perfect science. It really isn't. We have polls. We have all types of different things, but you still got to win them on the field to get where you want to go.
Even perfect science, there would be a fan base out there complaining that they didn't have it right in some way. So I do like how you mentioned, keeping rivalry games intact, even in a conference with an unbalanced schedule, because nobody wants to see rivalry games go away. Like a Delaware Villanova to end the year, Montana State. Nobody, would want to see anything but that for rivalry games. Now, there is one other conference I want to mention because all it takes is like one undefeated team to get knocked off, and suddenly everybody's into the mix. It feels like in a conference race, and the Pioneer Football League actually has two undefeated teams atop the standings. Davidson and Drake. Drake has come out of nowhere, more or less. They started last year 0-8, won their final three PFL games, and here they are 5-0 in league play. Now they don't play each other in the unbalanced schedule, but it creates a fun scenario, especially the defending champion, St. Thomas, trying to knock them off. But at the same time, St. Thomas is not eligible during their Division I transition. They're the defending champ. It's just fun what happens when an undefeated team gets knocked off and everybody jumps in.
Yeah, everybody else has a chance, they think now, because that team has a, one blemish on their conference record, which, in that case, they'd have that one loss. And then you got to put all the factors into it. And then you got to read the bylaws of what happens when these teams then if they have same conference records and maybe they didn't play, then it's one of those things where, it's just the size of the conference didn't allow them to have that matchup.
Hmm. I'd probably say Davidson has the easier schedule in November than Drake, but either way, it's just a fun scenario that one of these teams will be headed to the second season in the FCS playoffs. So great talk on conference races here. We're going to take a break right now for FCS Delivered, and we presented by FedEx Ground. We will be right back with segment 2.
Rehearsals for the school play were really coming along.
Bigger smile, Mr. Squirrel?
Until a custodian accidentally threw away the costumes.
Oh no!
Everyone was rattled. Miss Garrity forgot how to play. And the Queen of the Hedgehogs almost quit.
Find a new queen!
But replacement costumes were shipped with FedEx. And with added peace of mind from picture proof of delivery, everyone could focus on the perfect opening night. FedEx, where now meets next. For residential delivery only.
Welcome back to FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. Craig Haley along with Gary Reasons. Segment 2, we always look at our FedEx Ground FCS National Players and Team of the Week. We love our podcast platforms, Gary, but one thing we hope listeners also are doing are watching on our YouTube channel, because that's where we have our video of your on-campus visits each week to present one of the awards, interviews. I have to say, you always reflect the essence of a campus, and I think this week's was excellent and really showed off one of our FCS schools. But let's get to our Week 9 FedEx Ground FCS Award winners.
Yeah, we'll take a look here at the defensive side of the ball. So you start talking about defense. It's really, you got to have those teams, those guys come up in a big way. And I tell you, Terrell Allen from defensive end from Tennessee State, he's the National Defensive Player of the Week. And, he led his team with their fourth straight win. They got a 43-20 win over Lindenwood. He had 10 tackles in the game. 7 of those were solos, 6.5 tackles for loss in 30 yards loss. He has an FCS high 4.5 sacks and got a couple of forced fumbles, and one of those led to a touchdown in the game. So monster game for Terrell Allen, a defensive end from Tennessee State, our FCS National Defensive Player of the Week, Craig.
Gary, with our awards, all 5 or at least 4 out of 5 are generally from a winning effort, a winning team, a player on a winning team. But there's always one that stands out that you can't deny even in a loss. And Colgate's Owen Goss, the National Special Teams Player of the Week. They lost to Bucknell, but he blocked 3 kicks in this game, which tied the FCS single game record. He started out with a blocked field goal in the first quarter. Then he blocked extra points in the second quarter and the third quarter. The third one, he even tried to return for 2 defensive points. He made it 67 yards before he was tackled. Just a dominating special teams effort. He also was in on 4 tackles at free safety, 3 of them solos. Owen Goss just dominated as from Colgate, the National Special Teams Player of the Week.
Craig, do you know how often 3 blocks in a game has ever occurred in any college football game by one player? I think that might be a national record of some sort. Maybe that could be your study for the week.
Yeah. Well, for the FCS level, Owen was the 7th time. Dating back to 1978. There was actually a Colgate player who had done it as well. So he's only tying the school record, even though he's tied the national record.
My goodness. Well, congratulations to Owen Goss there for getting those 3 blocks. That's amazing. Let's take a look at the freshman player of the week here. We've got Nick Whitfield Jr. He's a quarterback from St. Francis, and this is his first career start. Their number 1 quarterback was injured, and so he took care of their largest comeback win since 2012. They were down 21-6 in the fourth quarter, and they have a 28-21 over Merrimack win. So he had 164 yards. Whitfield Jr., 2 touchdowns, and he also caught a touchdown, Craig, on a trick play. So quarterback for St. Francis, Nick Whitfield Jr., our freshman player of the week.
Outstanding. Speaking of outstanding, our FedEx Ground FCS National Team of the Week, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, number 1, 8-0 this year, 22 straight wins now after beating South Dakota 37-3. 22 straight is tied for the 6th longest winning streak in FCS history. They just dominated the last 3 quarters of this rivalry game. Winning by 34 points was the biggest margin of victory in this long-standing series in 60 years. Just a dominating effort for Coach Jimmy Rogers' squad, offense, defense, special teams. South Dakota State, our national team of the week.
All right, Craig, guess what? It's time. It's time to tell you where I went. I went to Austin Peay to see the offensive player of the week, Mike DiLiello, their quarterback. He had 6 touchdowns in their game last week, and I tell you, it was a great visit, and he had a great game. He threw to 6 different wide receivers, and having a chance to visit this university. It's in Clarksville, Tennessee, and it's a fun campus, and it's a beautiful time. It's fall, just starting there on campus, and you see the leaves changing, and it's a great time to be on campus. Their mascot is the Govs, the Governors, and so go to Clarksville. You got to go look at their facilities because they are top notch. They've got a great game field. They've got all great facilities, and they've got a program which Coach Scotty Walden has done a great job of putting the unity into that team and the structure. Mike DiLiello is a true leader. He's a 6-year quarterback, and he's a guy who knows a lot about the game, and he demonstrates that every single week for this football team. And had a chance to go out and watch them practice, and I was most impressed with this coach and his practice habits is that they were very, very structured, very upbeat. The tempo of this team is really second to none. There's no walking around in practice. They run everywhere, which I really love because it just kind of brings this team the mentality and effort together. And our trophy had a chance to go on campus as well. And Mike DiLiello really had a great ball game and really deserved that that award. Here's going to be a few shots for you. There's 6 of these now. Just think of 6 touchdowns in a football game where a quarterback throws that out there. And so actually when I presented him the award, I actually asked him to name every one of his receivers that he threw a touchdown pass to and had them stand up in our little presentation. And he got them all right. He was able to find all 6 of those guys. A couple of them were in class because we had a morning practice there on campus. But I tell you, the Govs, they did a great job in this win last weekend. And this week they have a huge game that they can possibly potentially get themselves in the lead for the conference in the UAC. So it's a cool thing, pretty impressive there. And this is how we did it on campus. We had a chance to look at them. And these guys, they really took to what I was telling them. And I think this was a very fun and opportunity to be involved with this group. And I really like the Govs and their opportunity here.
Our partner, FedEx Ground, I'd like to present the National Offensive Player of the Week Award to Mike DiLiello, quarterback, the Govs. There you go.
That was a real fun time, Craig. And guess got a little gear here. Got to watch that. And so, you got to love Austin Peay, and you got to love the nickname and kind of what their calling card is "Let's Go Peay."
I can tell the enthusiasm of this visit. It just seemed like a fun week at Austin Peay. And I mentioned at the top of the show how these trips, and we watching our videos on our YouTube channel, really kind of show the essence of the campus visits each week. But I have to say, it makes it a little more fun when you're there on Halloween and I see you went trick-or-treating and found some trick-or-treaters.
Yeah, little treat there. I got to see a little bit of a velociraptor, I think is what it is. And this is one of the characters that we caught up with on campus. I had to do a little impromptu interview there, Craig. So just talking to him, and had a lot of fun there. It's just a great campus. And I tell you, Casey Krieger, the sports information director for them on their football program, the communications side, he did a nice job of showing us around and giving us to the right spots. And congratulations to him, and thank you, Casey, for helping us out. Coach Waldron, I love the ability to go out there and talk to him. He's a guy from Cleburne, Texas, and I grew up just down the road from there, from Crowley, Texas, and he's now out in the state of Tennessee and just loving it. He told me he's had enjoyed his time there and still loving it. And he's got that program in a very, very good place. And this weekend is a huge opportunity for them to cement themselves in that UAC picture.
Seeing that dinosaur on Halloween there in the video, I know the NCAA is giving a lot of student athletes an extra year eligibility, or many extra years, but this seems to be a little extreme if that was the oldest redshirt freshman in the nation, Gary.
Oh, okay. I like that little Halloween action.
We're going to take another break, and we will be back with more FCS Delivered by FedEx Ground.
When someone accidentally threw away the school play costumes,
Oh no.
replacements were shipped with FedEx. And with picture proof of delivery, everyone could focus on the perfect opening night. FedEx, where now meets next. For residential delivery only.
Do you like what you're hearing on FCS Delivered today? For more national FCS coverage, please go to theanalyst.com throughout the week. We're the home for the FCS Top 25 Media Poll and the weekly and season-ending FCS National Awards, presented by FedEx Ground. We also take you across FCS Nation with stories, predictions, and an inside look. The FCS coverage can be found at theanalyst.com. Welcome back to FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. Gary Reasons and myself, Craig Haley. We've been talking Stats Reform FCS Top 25. We've been talking about the FedEx Ground National Weekly Awards. You can find all this coverage on theanalyst.com, plus a look at week 10 with our preview story each week. Gary, there's 3 weeks remaining in the regular season. 5 games this week will match top 25 teams, which is terrific. I mentioned at the beginning of the year that, there's always some surprises. And out of the 13 FCS leagues going into November, only 7 out of the 13 preseason favorites in their respective polls are at least tied for first place. So there's a lot of changes going on. But we have some great games. Let's start this week's look in the pick'ems at CAA football.
CAA football. Let's take a look at William and Mary and Albany, Craig. We're going to have this ball game. It's going to be an opportunity, I think, for Albany to possibly stay on top here and get on top. And, you've got William and Mary. They've got a great defense, and they're the tops in the CAA. But I think with Dylan Kelly, that's a pretty good defense for Albany. And they also get back and can mess with that quarterback. Reese Poffenbarger, I think that he may have an opportunity here in this ball game to kind of cement himself as one of the better quarterbacks that Albany has ever had. I'm going to go the Albany at home against William and Mary here to solidify themselves in that conference race.
This game is one of those games where I just go back and forth. 5 minutes later, I pick one team, and I think, no, that's the wrong pick. I mean, it can go either way. I think Albany's probably a little bit of a favorite being at home, and they've really been impressive this year. I'm going to go with William and Mary, Gary, because their backs are against the wall a little bit. They're 5-3, 3-2 in the league. That log jam we talked about in the CAA, they really need a win here. I think, their pass rush could maybe get it done this week, but certainly could go either one. I'm going to go with the Tribe. Now, we mentioned earlier in the Southern Conference how the Furman at Chattanooga winner will gain at least a share of the conference title and will definitely get the automatic bid coming out of that conference to the FCS playoffs. Whew. I'm going to go with Furman, but I tell you what, this is a tough game for them on the road.
It really is. And I think that Chattanooga, I had a chance to go there and visit with that football team, and they kind of seem like they have things percolating, and this is going to be a home game for them. And they're going to be playing, I think, inspired football. And their quarterback, Chase Artopius, big guy can lead that football team. They've got pretty good kickers. We've talked with him. He was our player of the week when I went out there with Cody Crowell. So he may have something to say in this. I'm going to take the Mocs at home in this game against Furman.
If you do a FedEx Ground National Awards on campus visit, that seems to become your team. I like that. You've seen Albany, you've seen the Mocs. We have another one coming up, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's go to the SWAC. We mentioned earlier that Florida A&M clinched the East Division spot in the SWAC championship game. First place is on the line in the West Division, Southern at Alcorn State. They're both 4-1 in conference. Now, the winner will get sole possession of first place. There's certainly more games to go. Nobody will clinch it with the win. But either way, it's a fun matchup. Who do you have in this one?
I think, Craig, this game is all about defense, and both teams are playing lights-out defense. But I think that Alcorn State at home is going to be the one that's going to smother Southern in this football game. So I got Alcorn State here.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go Alcorn as well. This is like an 18 to 17 kind of game, maybe a wacky number with a safety or something. So I agree. It's a defensive struggle, and both teams have really come on strong. Now, your most recent FedEx Ground FCS Awards visit, Austin Peay. They're on the road this week at Eastern Kentucky, the United Athletic Conference. First place is on the line. They're both 3-0. Central Arkansas is a game behind in the race. Who do you have in this one? I think I know, Gary.
I think you have to go back with this right here. Just I got the sweatshirt. It all works, and I love the team. I love the coach. I love the quarterback. I love the players on the football team. It's just a high energy thing. I think that this team, to me, was one of our more fun visits out there, and I really enjoyed that. But on the football field, they have done it pretty well this year. They've scored 40-plus points 5 times this season. Their quarterback, Mike DiLiello, is hot. They've got a great running back in Javon Jackson. I think this is a game that Austin Peay can really, kind of set themselves on the trajectory that I think they're on.
Yeah, it's a slugfest. I mean, we're talking, 40 to 35. They go back and forth. Parker McKinney gets it done. Obviously, the Eastern Kentucky quarterback. He's got 111 career touchdown runs and passes in 50 games. He gets it done. I'm going to stick with you, Mike DiLiello, and the Governors. I'll go Austin Peay as well. Now, we talked earlier about Montana, how their schedule is so tough to end the year. This week, the number 4 Grizz are hosting number 7 Sacramento State. I mentioned that Sacramento State has won the last 3 meetings since 2019, so they've been the dominant team in recent years. Woo. Who do you have in this one?
I just have to take the home team here, and the Grizz going to defend that turf at home. And I think that they're going to play some stout defense here in this football game, Craig. And Sac State, we've talked about them, and even from last year, how they ascended into the top of that conference, and that they're playing very, very well and very deserved of their ranking at number 7. But I think that Montana is kind of got a firm foothold here on who they are, what they're doing, and I think this is going to be a tough win, but I think the Grizz do get it done at home.
That's a great point, Gary. I mean, this is a different Grizz team that was in October than what we saw in September. And similar to Sac State, they've now shown last week that they have 2 quarterbacks that they can utilize, and Sac State has done that in recent years. They brought on a freshman last week. That's key going down the line as well. I mean, you're talking playoffs. You need a second quarterback in case something happens, and both teams showed that last week getting it done. I'm going to take them as a pick as you, Gary, because they just seem like a different team. That brings us to our FedEx Ground game of the week for number 11 North Dakota State at number 1 South Dakota State in the Missouri Valley Conference. Woo, how times have changed. The Bison have been the dynasty. South Dakota State, their rival, has won the last 4 meetings going into this matchup. Whew, I don't know. I'm going to go South Dakota State, but I just think it's a great game either way.
Yeah, I think that South Dakota State, this is one game every single year that they just kind of circle that NDSU on their schedule, and they say, hey, regardless of anything that happens, this is one game that we really want to put our best effort in it and come away with a W. And I think they're positioned to do that here in a big way against North Dakota State this year, Craig. Their team is really primed, and they've got great defense. Logan Kopp has done a great job. They have to play well. In South Dakota State, they run the football very well. They're a powerful football team. Isaiah Davis, Amar Johnson, those guys running the ball are just kind of setting the table for that football team. I think South Dakota State at home is gonna win and win handily against North Dakota State.
Now, I'm not going to say handily. I think the Bison can take it into the fourth quarter and keep it close. And I'll tell you why. Not only is it a rivalry game, and the Jackrabbits would be up for that, obviously at home, but the Jackrabbits, their schedule is unlike anybody else's in the Missouri Valley. They're not playing the three bottom teams, Indiana State, Murray State, Western Illinois. They're playing the best teams. And if you look at their succession of games, at some point, they may not come out on fire. And I think the Bison might have a chance in this one. I'm picking the Jackrabbits. There is one scenario I picked up on a few years ago, Gary, and I've been following, and it's still true. The last 20 meetings of this great rivalry, the team with the higher time of possession has won every time, all 20 times. So that is the key. You mentioned the run game. I just think it's a great game either way. But you do want to be able to run the ball in this matchup, Gary.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a slugfest. It'll be tough. It'll be physical. It'll be one of those games that you expect to see. That's the kind of game that you'll have, and there's no doubt about that. Time of possession is critical. When you run the football, you're going to be able to eat up that clock, and the team that is doing it better obviously may have that football longer, which kind of plays into a winning formula, Craig. So I think that the time of possession is a critical thing here.
Yes. Well, that's our FedEx Ground FCS game of the week. Number 11, North Dakota State at number 1, South Dakota State. It's going to be a great week of games. We mentioned there's 5 within the top 25 playing each other. That's always a tremendous scenario for fans, let alone the players and coaches. But that brings an end to our episode of FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. We want to thank FedEx Ground and also Stats Perform for bringing you our podcast every week. Seth Biley and Graham Bell are our producers. You can find all our coverage on theanalyst.com and on various social media platforms, including X is probably our most popular one, at FCS_stats, STATS. Gary, how are you going to be viewing these games this week?
Oh, well, I just got to say, let's go pee, okay? That's what we got to go do. We got to go say, let's go pee, and we'll figure out the rest of it here over the weekend, okay?
Go Cubs. All right, well, thank you, Gary. We're looking forward to all the action. Wish you safe travels coming up, and we thank everybody for tuning into another episode of FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground.